I'd like to welcome everyone to the 2014 SU Research Day and Innovation Showcase. I'm Clifton Griffin, Dean of Grad Studies and Research. First and foremost, thank all of you for being here. In particular, I'd like to thank our Provost, Dr. Allen, sitting back here for her support for this event and for research and scholarship overall. This day is about creating connections. Those connections are important, whether it's faculty member to faculty member right here on campus, or it's creating connections between our campus and the outside community. That's what we hope will be the takeaway message from your presentations today. Next up, we have Teena, Gorrow, and Craig Koppie, who are going to talk to us about the Chesapeake Bay bald eagle, an amazing success story in wildlife conservation.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We are very honored that we would have the opportunity to share the Chesapeake Bay bald eagle during the 2014 Research Day here at SU. Thank you so much for having us. So, as we get started, we would like to introduce ourselves. I'm Teena Gorrow, and I'm a professor in the Department of Teacher Education here at SU. Prior to joining the education faculty, I served as an administrator and a teacher in Maryland's public schools, and I am absolutely fascinated by the American bald eagle. I've spent most of the last several years as a part of my scholarly effort observing, researching, and photographing this amazing bird. So meet my colleague, Craig.
Hi, I'm Craig Koppie. I hope you can hear me all right. I spent most of my time and my life in Virginia, but I had a focal attention on eagles in Chesapeake Bay. I kind of knew very young what I wanted to do, and I definitely want to be a biologist, and I saw myself working with eagles. And there's nothing more special in one's life to actually know you did just what you wanted to do. So I always tell undergraduates, have a dream and stick to it, make it happen, and hopefully after our talk today, I'll be able to make somebody's dream come true. But anyway, two things I've really enjoyed is the recovery of the bald eagle and the peregrine falcon, two of the prize species. Again, because I love raptors, I just focused on them, but I learned so much more because their lives are connected to a greater ecosystem. So when I look at academia, I look at young minds and see opportunities and what they might want to do, but all it takes is some exposure, and that's really what we're going to try to do here today.
So together, Craig and I collaborated as the authors and photographers for our new book, Inside a Bald Eagle's Nest. This was released by Schiffer Publishing in December, and together we tell the story of the American bald eagle's nesting season through photographs that we were able to capture in their natural habitats. And we have some very exciting news that we would like to share with you. 2 weeks ago, Craig and I were nationally recognized by the Nature Generation with the 2014 Green Earth Book Award, and to be named distinguished authors whose work inspires others to appreciate and care for the environment is a tremendous honor, and we extend our sincere appreciation to the Nature Generation for recognizing us, our book, and our important story to tell about these birds. We focused on a pair of breeding eagles just outside of DC. It was really fascinating to see the 360 view shed. You could see the Capitol, you could see the Alexandria skyline, and all around them was the buzz of suburbia. Can you imagine having this in your backyard? So we were very careful not to disturb the eagles. We did our photographs from blinds, and we also used telephoto lens to capture the images of their story. Our book takes one through the entire nesting season from the time the eagles return to their nest to prepare for egg laying, and we follow this nest all the way through until the eaglets are hatching in the spring and when they take their first flight. We have a couple of stories to share with you that were quite remarkable, things that Craig and I had actually never seen reported in other literature about bald eagles. For example, we watched as the birds were so undeniably affectionate toward each other while they were bringing their sticks and their twigs to the nest to repair the nest for another season. We would see them stop from time to bond. They would beak each other and they would lean their heads in toward each other, and their caring for each other was truly undeniable. We also had some funny experiences watching the eagles as he would bring in a branch and he would so painstakingly place it around the nest. Then he would leave the nest to go get another twig, and she would go fix it where it really belonged. Ladies, do I have a witness? Yeah. So she was very respectful to him, but let's just say their love might not have been perfect, who knows. But they did some really fascinating things together. We also just admired the gentleness with this fierce beak, being able to feed tiny morsels of food to little ones that weigh about as much as a stick of butter. So pretty fascinating to watch the tender care of these large birds as they're taking care of something that we could fit in our hand. Also, we wanted to share one very sweet story with you. We watched as Mom brought in dried grasses and literally wrapped the babies and tucked them in on this unseasonably cold spring night. Their care for their critters is very similar to the way we take care of our human children. And we know that they played with toys. Mom and Dad would bring pine cones, and Craig actually brought some lining from the nest material so that you could see those if you're interested after we conclude our presentation to see some things from real nests. So, now, as we all drive to and from work, we see a lot of eagles in this area. And truly, it's remarkable that our bird has recovered, yet that wasn't always the case. So Craig's going to tell us a little bit about how this looked about 30 years ago.
Yeah, 30 years ago, at least for me, I started working with eagles in '77, and that's pretty much when the Fish and Wildlife Service had listed the species for federal protection, late '69s, I mean. But what I saw in Chesapeake Bay was basically no white-headed heads or white tails. I never saw an eagle. Most people didn't see them. It was not commonplace. They were pretty much, very close to being annihilated in our area and across the country. What I got to watch, and what a privilege to be able to actually watch this eagle, this endangered species, go from 70 birds to the entire Chesapeake Bay, producing almost less than one chick per nest. So we had a lot of duds because of DDT still residual in the eggs, and females that needed to be replaced by newer ones that had cleaner systems, and all that takes time. But to actually watch this and be part of it, phenomenal. We worked with academia, we had grassroots groups, you name it, we all came together, and with the federal protection made opportunities for the species. But to watch it, again, I mean, I find myself puzzled, having an opportunity that's right under my nose, having known that I just lived it, and the public isn't even aware of how quickly, in some ways, this bird went from a nothing population to now close to 1,600 nesting in the Chesapeake Bay. So that's pretty significant, because when you have that number of birds nesting, you have at least 4 generations of what we call subadult eagles. And those birds are probably the most important contribution to that population. Without them, you have no seed population. So protecting them and their habitat is key.
So Craig, tell us a little bit about why these eagles were at risk of becoming extinct.
Well, obviously for us, in our era, we know it was DDT. I want to say it's like inappropriate application but we were trying to get rid of pesticides on farm crops, but we didn't really pay much attention to the cumulative effects and impacts to other species. So to watch the cleaning of this chemical, it's taken a lot of years, and there's still some parts of that remaining, but we do have a solid population. One of the things now that we're looking at, again, in this whole process of recovery, is we didn't have the number of birds, but we had adequate habitat. Now we really don't have adequate habitat, but we have plenty of birds. So, and it's a competition, and there's a dynamics between a human population growth and the eagle's growth, and the need for the same sustainable resource, and that is the land and the water. For them, the food is found in the water, but they still need security, and they need less opportunities to interact with humans. They need the quiet zones. So we talked about a couple of these, habitat loss, and there are diseases on the landscape. West Nile virus still is an issue for a lot of birds. We have one situation now where the birds that we're analyzing blood from, it's showing high signs of lead. So lead ingestion is from carcasses where hunters have used steel, or I should say lead shot their bullets, or shot from waterfowl, or I should say upland game birds, because waterfowl, there is a federal law that you can only use steel shot. But it seems to be still an issue, and it wasn't long ago. In fact, it was just last week or maybe 2 weeks ago where an eagle literally fell from the sky and landed in the water near a dock, and a person walked over to it and was able to pull it out with a net. It went to tri-state. Sure enough, lead poisoning at a level that affects the motor coordination of a species, and it's being found way too prevalent. Of course, the reason why this bird had done so well is the federal protection. The bald eagle has been protected for hundreds of years under the Bald and Golden Eagle Protection Act, but when this species became endangered, it then had the greater protection under ESA. And interestingly enough, it was easy for me in my consultation positions to work with developers and basically say, this is our guidelines. We can't allow any take, which is incidental to your project, your development. And it was quite easy to basically say no. In fact, hell no. We had to work and make sure this population wasn't at a level of jeopardy. So anyway, so this bird moved up through the ranks. The Bald and Golden Eagle Protection Act today protects the bird, but in a slightly different manner. Instead of using the word take, we use disturb, and we can talk a little more about that later. So there's a million things I could talk about, and I find myself always standing here wondering what you'd like to really hear. Great
so
stories.
I'll tell you what I asked him to tell you about. How about that?
That's why I need her.
Yeah, so Craig Koppie is a legend, and it's really an honor to be able to work with him, because I didn't think anyone loved eagles any more than I do, but he really loves them too. And he's being a bit humble and shy about his position in all of this, but he is one of those people who climbed the trees and did incredible work for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to be able to bring this bird back. One of the fascinating stories that Craig tells is about how he removed chicks from one of the nests locally in the Dorchester County area at Blackwater Refuge and transported those to Vermont. So I thought that maybe some of you might enjoy hearing what it's like to climb a tree, to peer over that side of the nest for the first time. You and I can't do that because we would go to jail, but Craig can do that because he's wearing a badge. And to be able to see what fascinating things are lying in that nest, and to hear what the reaction is of those little birds. And maybe you have questions that you'll like to ask about, is there danger to those birds? And then how in the world he got them to Vermont and why. So can you tell us that story real quick?
Yeah. First of all, I can't talk about that until I tell you my first real nest that I climbed. And it happened, of all things, to be George Washington's birthplace. So that was my first climb, and I was brought on to the team before I was a Fish and Wildlife Service employee. And the climb itself, it's the feeling of Jack and the Beanstalk. It really is. You feel so small in nature to be climbing such a big loblolly pine, massive, almost to my feeling was like a redwood. And so climbing up, I expected there's going to be Junior up there. I didn't expect the parents to be aggressive. Nothing like peregrine falcons. So the climb is the hardest part, I thought. Equally, the difficulty is actually getting into the nest. So depending on where the nest is, and the picture you see there, that is a bad nest. That is one that has been there for probably 15 years, and the sticks are compressed to the tree, no hand grips. There's a lot of difficulty there, so I have an extension pole and other things that make me able to do this. Like I said, I could talk
So tell them
forever on
about
this.
the Vermont.
All right, Vermont, because the numbers were so high and we recovered the species off the endangered species list, there was only one state left back around 2005, I think it was, that did not have an eagle nesting in the state, and that was Vermont. Chesapeake Bay contributed about, I think, 8 birds, which we collected. So I put them in a bag, much like you see up here, and they're lowered down. And the irony of all this is that it actually worked. Of the 8 or so that were released up there in a hack tower, the birds actually came back. One of the birds came back from that group and actually started the process for the state of Vermont. And they have a nesting pair there. So every state's got them.
You take the parents and the little ones, or just
No, it's just the young one, that size, 8 to 9 weeks old.
how many?
About 8. Yeah.
Not all from one nest, though.
No, we take one. If the birds have, if the pair has triplets, then we can take one. We can even take 2. It's really not a problem.
And you know at that point they're going to be themselves?
Yeah, well, the point is they're released in a manner that they are conditioned to feed, socialize with the group they're in, and they're released as a group. And so there's always food available to them, but they key in on each other.
Yeah, so Craig, do you want to mention the 4 chick nests that you're starting to see in the Chesapeake Bay area?
Okay, yeah, what's really great here, and you all should be patting yourselves on the back, because not far from here, we actually had 2 nests that were about 2 miles apart off the Sassafras River, and there were 4 chick nests. So to have quadruplets is really unheard of, even in Alaska. So I've been seeing a few of these from time to time, but to see 2 of them really in the same watershed and see so many triplet broods as well, that bodes very well for the conditions of the natural resources in that area.
So tell us what a normal clutch size would be in this area.
Normal clutch size now I can say is probably 2.5, but just to give you an idea, so you can say, I saw the size of what an eagle egg is. That is an eagle egg, and you could put a chicken egg inside of it, which I did to impress the kids. I should have done it for you too.
So in our remaining moments, we wanted to tell you that it's all not great news for the bald eagle, because although it has recovered and its numbers continue to rise, and we have more than 70,000 pairs in the lower, or 70,000 individuals in the lower 48 states, there are some very real threats that continue to concern those of us who are watching carefully this eagle's plight. Tell us a little bit about some of the things we need to be watching for.
Well, for all of us, we need to be concentrating on contaminants always. But habitat loss and fragmentation is a problem for any bird that requires a forested edge near water to feed. So the more trees that are cleared, the less desirable for eagles. Is that a bad thing? It depends on what you're looking for as a carrying capacity. And right now, the Chesapeake Bay has not reached carrying capacity for eagles. The northern Chesapeake Bay is quickly reaching that, like at Aberdeen Proving Ground and military base.
So we also want to mention that, there's a national debate taking place right around us with the turbine farm plan that's being discussed in Somerset County. And we should all be paying a lot of attention because with clean energy comes some very disturbing and surprising side effects, like 300,000 birds, including bald and golden eagles and bats, being mutilated each year. And those numbers will potentially even be higher with a project like that in Somerset because the farms will be larger, taller than the Washington Monument. Craig isn't at liberty to discuss that, and he is not here today in an official capacity for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, but I'm a citizen, and I'm reading very carefully and watching. I don't live in Somerset County, but here's what I know. I live in Dorchester County, and I know what happens to the birds who fly through and migrate in Somerset County will directly affect the enjoyment that I have when I go to Blackwater Refuge and will potentially affect the view shed I enjoy. I will likely be able to see the tops of these 689 or whatever they are feet tall units from the land where I take pictures of eagles. And some of those birds that I watch each year go back and forth will definitely be mutilated. My friends, we really need to pay attention to what's happening, and we need to get involved and to think about what we want our environment to look like 40 years from now, 50 years from now, 100 years from now, because some of the things that we agree to or we stand passively by and just let happen can really destroy some of the quality of life that we enjoy today. But we also wanted to tell you about what's really frightening is that without all of these other potential concerns that we face with the eagle, still only 1 in 10 eagles survive to adulthood. The more we do to try to learn about and appreciate the eagle's way of life and to help provide an environment that's conducive to them, maybe those numbers could improve. So our last comments are really about research. We thought you'd like to know some of the research that's currently being conducted. So Craig actually brought a transmitter and maybe can tell you about some of that and why he bans birds.
So the image you see on the screen, that's actually Ungava Bay, which is up near, areas we don't go to, way up in Canada, near Labrador. We have some of these satellite transmitters attached to birds. They have a special harness that goes on here. It takes about an hour to put on. This bird can be tracked anywhere in the world for about 3 years, and we get information on the bird roughly 8 times a day, and it's reported every 3 days by the satellite. Why didn't we have this technology when this species was at the brink? Because everything we did had to do with much smaller transmitters, UHF, and you really only got about 50 miles of a distance to follow, either in a plane, car, or whatever. So, but we're at a point now, this species has recovered, but what's scaring me a little bit is that what you don't know can hurt you, and to see eagles falling out of the sky and understanding that it isn't just combat between eagles during mating and fighting for territories, but there's still some unclean situations going on. Mm-hmm. So this is where I'm trying to connect with academia. I'm trying to look for opportunities for universities like yours, and the only way to do that is actually start knocking on the door. So this was a great segue, this book, and the fact that you had a day for talking about research. I'm trying to get more of an interaction with your university, and I think we could probably have something work really well here.
Craig has a ton of data, so if you're interested in being an intern, please give us a call. So we really thank you. You've been so patient as we shared a few things with you. We'd love to take any questions that you have about America's bird. So everybody know how old this bird is, and do you want to know about it and whether or not it's real, and does anybody know?
It's alive, it's just very quiet.
No, it was alive. Craig, tell us what happened to this bird.
Again, another threat, electrocution. It's a real issue for us. Anywhere we've got electrical wires that are between a foraging area and its roost or nesting area, you're going to have these problems. Wind power may be a problem too. The more these birds that are in those areas where they feed, fly, or I want to say communally gather, those are the issues. But this is a 2.5-year-old. One thing, if you want to impress your friends, if someone says, "Oh wow, I just saw a golden eagle downtown," well, make sure you look at the tarsus. If you see this yellow area, you know that that's the scales on the bird's tarsus. If you can see that, it's a bald eagle. A golden eagle will have feathers that run all the way down to the top of its feet.
And the golden eagle has beautiful highlights. Ladies, you know, we pay big money to have our hair done like the golden eagle with all that pretty gold in its hackles. So are there questions for us? Yes.
Have eagles nested in Pemberton? Like when I saw an eagle nest there. But
So the question is, have eagles nested locally around the Pemberton area? So Craig, do you have data on nests in this
Well,
in
we
Wycomico?
can definitely get that if anyone really wants it. The last true sets of data was up to 2004, which was conducted by Maryland Department of Natural Resources. After that, it's kind of a catch-as-catch-can. We're not really doing full observations anymore, the nest studies. But they're here, definitely, in big numbers.
4-mile range? Do they have a 4-mile range of territory?
Great question. So the question is, what is the territory range for an eagle, and how far apart would they nest?
That might be the last question, too. I've run out of time. Back around, I'm going to say in the early 2000s, most of the data was showing linearly about a mile apart, you could find an eagle nest. As long as that habitat provided the things it needed for nesting and feeding, you could almost predict, boom, he's there if there isn't one a mile from the other.
What happens when you move an eagle? Do they adjust to Vermont without any trouble at all, knowing their environment?
So
Well,
the question is,
thank you.
When the eagle was moved to the Vermont area, what are the adjustment concerns that they face?
I don't think they really have any problem at all. I think it's all about survival, and for them, it's eating. You're with a bunch of other cohorts of your age. You're going to want to compete with them for that food. So it's right there. It's presented at their feet. We're giving it to them. They don't know it's us doing it. They learn how to eat because they're scavengers. In this case, sorry, buddy, you're more than a scavenger. But they clearly, they're social, and because of that dynamic, they're able to be at a young age with other ones. And you only need one smart one in the group. Hopefully he's a smart one. If you hang around with the bad one, then they all go bad.
So tell us the characteristics we need for survival. So we need water,
Shelter.
shelter.
And if all good components in life are there, then those birds are physically fit and can reproduce.
And they were old enough that they could eat on their own. They didn't need to be fed by the beak. Do we have time for one more question?
One very quick question.
Okay, we have a very quick question.
Could you comment on the airports that are not using wildlife deterrents, or such as the Gorrow Airport, where 2 eagles killed?
I can't give you a fast answer on that one, but I can talk to you afterwards.
Well, the question is about the airport and the concern, I'm sorry, I don't have your exact words, but what happens at the airports where eagles have been struck? We know that there's a concern, and you specifically mentioned Norfolk, and we were well aware of the little rock stars that went on to live at the Wildlife Center of Virginia, and they were cared by hand until they were old enough to fly, but the mother was struck by a plane, and that nest was right in the direct route from the airport and has since been removed.
Now, we do have permits for that, but again, it's involved. You got to understand that there's only 2 things that can happen. Do you keep tearing nests down? Do you kill the adults? Or do you clear all the habitat? Well, you can't clear all the habitat. That's just a no-brainer there. Mm-hmm. So what's left is either you got to, under a permit, kill the adults, which means nothing. 2 more adults will come back in. The habitat's there. We've got a rising population. So a lot of people think that they know what's the right answer to do. the Fish and Wildlife Service has a responsibility for air safety as well. If we know that these birds, and clearly it showed danger for people as well as themselves, we had to allow the permit to haze, which keeps the birds moving on, and take the nest down whenever possible.
Well, I think we're out of time.
We are.
But we
Thank you
just
very,
thank
very
you
much.
so much for being a wonderful audience. Thank you.